Desert's news station. This is CBS 2 News at 11.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us for your weekend edition of CBS 2 News at 11. I'm David Wohl. Topping the news tonight, a member of the armed forces locally has died after being hit in a head-on traffic collision. I'll tell you why. Theoretically, Florida is a no-fault state as opposed to New York, which means this shouldn't matter, which means theoretically the material girl should be immaterial, but she's not. And here's why. They do consider morality issues when it comes to custody and financial issues. You know, Megan, this case is the greatest argument for a no-fault divorce you could possibly ask for. As far as the swinger site, maybe that comes in. But the porn site, what relevance is that? You know, let's face it, the salacious details of Peter Cook's alleged antics have already been splashed around the tabloids, the newspapers, television. The only difference now is that they will be detailed under oath.
Whether this family has a good lawsuit, do they?
Yeah, and Megan, that question is it an inherently dangerous product given the circumstances of its use? Megan, there's no doubt that these bats significantly increase the velocity of baseballs. After the initial holdup, Gallagher wasn't satisfied with his take. Mrs. Kim fled out the back of the store while Gallagher went around the back of the cases to where she was standing. The case was left open by Mrs. Kim, so Gallagher reached in, taking up to $70,000 worth of jewelry out of the case and fleeing out the front door. Thanks once again to our partners in this effort, Riverside County DA Rod Pacheco and Sheriff Stan Sniff. You can help bring Jeffrey Gallagher to justice and bring a lot of relief to the Kims. If you've seen Gallagher, call Valley Crime Stoppers at 341-STOP. At about 5:30 a.m., Sergio Padilla stopped at a friend's home right here at the Arabian Mobile Home Park. We're not exactly sure why he stopped here. We do know it was the last stop he would ever make.
KPSP Local 2's David Wohl looks at the numbers.
Chris Andy, overall, nationally, the numbers look pretty good as far as violent crimes trending downward. The West, you can see, down 1.7%. The Midwest, also down 1.7%. Perhaps the best news, the Northeast, down 5.4%. But the trouble spot, the South, you can see it right there, up 0.7%. And why was that? You can see murder and robbery, both up 3%. Troubling news. What about here in Riverside County? What do the numbers reflect? Well, the feds have the numbers for the three largest cities, Riverside, Moreno Valley, and Corona.
That's right. KPSP Local 2 reporter and our legal analyst David Wohl joins us now with the story of one man who was ticketed for trying to market his buggy. Is that right, David?
Chris, Andy, last Saturday, Bill Plummer drove his vehicle to a shopping center in La Quinta. While he was shopping, an officer came by and ticketed his car. Why? For having a sign just like this one, for sale, on his vehicle.
I'm guilty already. I'm guilty by leaving my garage.
Now, Chris, Andy, I have a call into La Quinta PD. So far, no response. It's only a $50 ticket, but in these financial times, that's nothing to sneeze at. Live in Thousand Palms, I'm David Wohl, KPSP Local 2 News. August 22nd, 2007 was the first day as a bank teller for one of the employees here at Provident Bank. Her supervisor told her bank robberies rarely happen and there's nothing to worry about. When Reynaldo Vasquez walked in, that all changed. Of course, Florida is a community property state, so that means if he uses community property, their money to buy that ticket, then the winnings go to both of them. There are two exceptions if it came by inheritance or a gift. And my guess is he can't prove either one of those exceptions, so she's going to get 50% of that money. Be honest, I won a lottery ticket last week. I told my wife right off the bat, it was only $6, but I still told her, honesty is the best policy. And even if he's convicted on all charges, Bonds has two chances of serving 30 years in prison, slim and none. Have a look at the hard time served by other infamous athletes who were convicted on far more serious charges.
But the people who ought to be locked up and the people who ought to go to jail are the government officials who swore an oath. They signed a non-disclosure agreement.
You know, his position was, I'm not sure if I legally own it. Check into it, do the legal research, file a motion to intervene in the San Diego case if you need to. But I want to know who owns it because I want to do the right thing. And I really had a lot of respect for him for that. He could have come up to me and said, you know, find a way that I can own this thing. Is there any legal way, any legal maneuvering that can go on so I can retain ownership of this? But no. He said, do the right thing, look into it for me. And unfortunately, before I could do that, He was picked up on the case in chief. Well, Chris, you know, it's incredible today. The most amazing thing about getting Governor Schwarzenegger's decision was the fact that this wasn't a tough call for him at all. These last 5 days since the hearing he held with the defense and the prosecutors have been writing this report, not wringing his hands over whether he should grant clemency or not. It was a stinging rebuke of this petition for clemency, all the way back from the horrific nature of the crimes to the 24 years in the courts of appeals to Williams' claim that he was redeemed somehow, even though he never admitted to committing the crimes to begin with. And also, Governor Schwarzenegger felt there was simply no evidence to prove at all that Williams' preachings had somehow prevented young African-American kids from joining gangs. So it was across-the-board denial. And now, as you said, we're set 6 hours from now from the lethal injection. I'll be headed up there at 11:30 p.m. along with 16 other members of the media, and it should be a, some say, life-changing experience.
David Wohl sat down tonight for an exclusive interview with a man who is one of the abuse victims taking part in that settlement. David?
And he could get as much as $1 million as a result of a last-minute settlement between clergy abuse victims and the Catholic Church. But more than anything, Brad Reynolds is relieved to get some closure on a nightmare that has lasted 37 years. Brad Reynolds of Bermuda Dunes became a sexual abuse victim in the early 70s, a time when the entire issue of clergy abuse was rarely discussed or dealt with.
Well, when I was in fourth grade, back in Mary Mason, San Diego, I was molested by a Catholic priest, and it went on for about 4 years.
What am I missing here? I mean, he keeps saying how great everything was with his wife, and yet there are other tapes where he's talking about how much he hates her and wants to get rid of her.
Oh, Dan, absolutely. And if you listen to what McClarty, the stuntman, Hamilton, the stuntman, and you listen to Detective Welch, ex-Detective Welch, have to say, I mean, Robert Blake described this woman as basically the bride of Satan. I mean, are you kidding me? This was clearly an attempt to manipulate the jury pool to make the people of this jurisdiction feel that he had nothing against this woman. And I think when you hear the rest of the testimony that's forthcoming, it isn't going to fly, Dan.
I'm a human.
It's a different issue.
I'm a human, and I can't even predict the weather.
Right. Well, you know,
I'm kidding.
Well, you know what, you do a pretty darn good job in my book, Jody. You're selling yourself short.
Thank you, folks. We'll see how I do. Let's check it out. 5-day forecast. We'll start out the work week a little dry and end up a little sticky. We've been seeing it. We're used to it. We'll take it.
Same old. All right.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.